Well, it's finale time of Series 11, and it was okay, I guess. Yeah. It has a lot. It's pretty much the perfect summary for Series 11 in a lot of ways. Tim Shaw is back. Yay. Um, though, to be honest, he's barely in this episode, so what's the point? Like, seriously, he is barely in this episode at all. I think really the main point of having him back in this episode was to really wrap up Graham's story arc, which is the best bit of the episode. The fact that, that does actually get a wrap up and a nice, satisfying conclusion to it, to the, I'll call it the Grace story arc. Yeah, that's what I'll call it. But it's a bit all over the place. I mean, it has some nice tension and that in it, and the threat does feel more genuine and real throughout, but nobody dies in this episode. Yeah. In fact, they even in a few scenes, the two people had, the ability to manipulate the universe. I thought one of them was dead. The guy who was lying on the floor, but no, he's alive in the next scene. So everyone lives. Tim Shaw is, that is clearly mimicking, Tim Shaw being frozen and locked away. That is clearly taking a bit of inspiration from Destiny of the Daleks. And speaking of Daleks, I'll get on to that topic later, but Tim Shaw kind of felt a bit wasted in this episode. I never thought he was a great villain to begin with, but, he was much better and a lot more threatening in this episode than he was in his previous one. But, he's kind of wasted since he's barely in the episode, really. And to be honest, it feels like there's far too many things happening in this 50 minutes where it has that problem of literally exposition dumping. That there's literally the 13th Doctor might as well have the tagline, I exposition everything. It's literally, this does this, and this is what happened, and this is how we're going to stop, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And I'm really, really getting sick of the show don't tell rule. Now, I was happy that this episode relied a little bit less on CGI than the previous ones. There was a fair bit in it, but I'm glad that, although we did have some robots, it was practical effects and costumes, not just everything be CGI'd. And also, I found out last week's episode where we had the frog, it wasn't originally going to be a frog. They actually did make a costume for this monster, but they decided to have a CGI frog instead, which baffles me, frankly, but whatever. So yeah, it's all right. But it's a bit unremarkable, to be honest. I'd say it was decent enough, although it clearly needed to be an hour. At least an hour. To be honest, this story needed a lot more to it in terms of time given. It felt like it was just trying to cram in far too much in the time that it had. And it just felt like, and here's another thing, and here's another thing, and here's another thing, and here's another thing, and here's another thing. It just felt like too much squashed into 50 minutes. Where, to be honest, the premise could have just been, Tim Shaw's back, he wants, Doctor and crew turn up, he wants taking revenge, he's taking over this planet. That would have been enough. But then to add Lee after Lee after Lee after Lee after Lee after Lee, it just goes on and 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 on, and it's far too much. But anyway, let's talk about the more interesting thing. the New Year's Day trailer. Now, Daleks are back, clearly, in the New Year's Day trailer. There's been news articles talking about the Daleks returning, and clearly, in the trailer, in the teaser trailer, it's clearly supposed to be probably a Dalek. Especially when Graham says, does this creature not have a name? Yeah, it's going to be a Dalek. And Nick Briggs himself, when he was doing a video tour, giving people obviously a virtual tour around the Big Finish studios, he was basically hinting at it at the moment, that he'd be back. Slight little hints at it, but it does seem pretty likely, to be honest, and that would just about correlate within the Toy Nation contract. Yes, it is slightly just over a year, though that might give them just enough wriggle room with it being on New Year's Day, since the last Dalek appearance was Christmas 2017, so that might just give them enough wriggle room. But that will probably correlate with it, so it does seem likely. Hopefully they don't fuck it up. But yeah, I'm just going to talk about Series 11 as a whole now. Series 11 is one of the most blandest series of Doctor Who ever, and it was just disappointing, essentially. It felt very unremarkable throughout, and for a lot of the time it just didn't feel like Doctor Who. This episode actually did feel like Doctor Who. It felt like maybe it felt towards the end of the series, maybe we're starting to get there in this episode. And a couple of others, starting to feel more like Doctor Who. But, oh god, Chris Chibnall is not suited to Doctor Who. That is the biggest issue. And I don't think Jodie Whittaker is suited to playing the Doctor. That's the thing. It just doesn't feel like her and the character of the Doctor kind of gel together. And it just feels, I don't know. I mean, maybe given some better writers and that, I don't know, is her name Sarah something? Can't remember who wrote Face the Raven and Thin Ice. I really wish she had returned for this, because although her stories weren't the greatest ones ever, they were inventive. And I think that's what this series needed, a bit more of an inventive thing, where, because a lot of the time it was Chris Chibnall's one, it felt like let's just play it as safe as possible and just be essentially a bore fest throughout. And with other writers, it's just like, let's go completely off the rails and just do something non-Doctor Who. So yeah, Series 11, I think this is probably the first series that I'm not going to be buying on Blu-ray when it comes out. I just have literally no interest in buying it. So yeah, Series 11 I will not be buying. Yeah, it's just... Is it the worst series? Yes, in a way of it just bored me. Like, in terms of the worst series of Doctor Who, you've got season 24 of the classic series, you've got series 6, and you've got series 9. I would say those collectively, are the worst in terms of, quality series. But at least some of the bad... I think season 24 can at least be entertaining in how bad it is. And you could say, I don't know, in series 6 or 9. But Series 6 and 9 still had, their hidden gems throughout. Like, Series 9 had Under the Lake and Before the Flood, which is my favourite Capaldi story. Series 6 had a really good opener and a few stories here and there. But this one, I mean, there's just nothing remarkable about it. There's not the story that you go, oh, well, that was clearly the defining moment of Series 11. There's just not that this time around. And it is disappointing. It feels like this needed more time, to be honest. It felt like Chris Chibnall was I don't know, just took it in completely his direction, and maybe, to be honest, I think it should really go back to the days where it was more of a collaborative effort rather than just one guy running the whole thing. And I mean, Chris Chibnall wrote the majority of this series, whether co-writing or writing on his own. And maybe, yes, that's to keep a consistent tone and theme throughout, but it's a lack of variety, and to be honest, it's a lack of creativity throughout it. But yeah. Oh, yo. That is hit for Series 11. Obviously, be back in a few weeks' time for the New Year's Day special, which, at least the trailer does look interesting. I'll give it that. Not the trailer that they put in the next time trailer, which is literally the Doctor saying a couple lines of dialogue, but the trailer that aired after this episode finished at least had me enough to look engaged and like, ooh, what's happening here? So, but not that remarkable, to be honest. Most of the trailers are boring as hell, but yeah. Anyway, I've rabbled on long enough, and I'll see you whenever I can be asked to, be frank. Taxi bye.